It's been a hot minute since I've actually spoken about Manor Lords. The game came out a few months ago now and is still, well, reaching some great successes. Manor Lords being initially a solo developed project and now really starting to expand the team, it's time to actually look at what the future is going to hold. Selling millions of copies within the first few weeks, it is no secret that this is one of the greatest successes, well, in modern history for PC games. Releasing at the end of April 2024, we had over 172,000 concurrent players, beating out some of the top games of all time. Okay, now we have started to settle down. We're starting to see it go around the 10, 11,000 concurrent players, which is incredibly healthy, especially for a single player only game. I mean, we're not having current events, current updates that are out at this point in time, so there is nothing more you could ask for. But it is true that Manor Lords and Slavic Magic, the lead developer, has gone somewhat silent. In the following months after its release, Manor Lords got plenty of updates and patches, and while some patches are still coming in, there isn't any fanfare going on at the moment because I think they're taking a bit of a step back to really look at what's next, to look at the content and, well, more importantly, how this game can hold up. Longevity is one of the most important factors for a game like this. I mean, single-player titles never really have the sustaining power unless they have expanded stories, DLCs, so on and so forth. And for city builders, that just really isn't the possibilities. So what can they do in order to keep this game going? There's a few things that I know and confirmed have been coming in the future for Manor Lords, and there's a few things that I would like and are kind of speculations that I think would improve the game. But one of the first things is additional maps. This was something I noticed when you launch up Manor Lords and you go into its opening screen. It gives you the option to pick out the early access map, and that's it. But the fact that there is a list where the map should be means that we should be getting some more coming in the future. This point in time, it does seem like there is a good amount of replayability, whether you're choosing different regions that have different fertilities, or of course different difficulties and the few and limited game modes. But adding more maps will completely change the way this game was played. We are set within Europe, of course, in the medieval times, so there are limitations there, but maybe some more coastline stuff, adding in new mechanics like fishing. That could be an option for Manor Lords. Rivers starting to run through. We don't really have water bodies, and these are things that are normally great for splitting up maps. Having rivers and lakes, not just to change the way that you build and deciding on where you settle, but the maps for battling themselves, helping you use this terrain. I mean, Slavic Magic spent so long putting in fighting mechanics to sort of echo on some similar basis what Total War is doing, having people fighting downhill for buffs or archers being weaker within forests. There's no reason that that can't be changed and expanded with things like water bodies, mountains, cliff sides. I mean, there is some cliff sides within this map, but it doesn't really affect it that much since people just hopped out. It looks cool though, but I'd like to see more terrain details and things coming into effect with the battles and, well, where you decide to settle your villages. And I think additional maps would be great for that. And then that also adds me on to the next thing, and this is modding. See, a community is the thing that holds up these titles. They've sold 3 million copies. There is enough people playing it, and there's enough people wanting to see more from it. And there is no reason why, with, well, the correct amount of tools and releases, that people and the community can't help expand this thing. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to seeing what they do with it. Now, I do know that modding is something that can work within the game. I mean, we've already seen the Shrek mods, the Henry of Skalitz mods. There's been some small changes mods to mechanics. For example, bandit hordes are a bit bigger. The enemy army at the end is much bigger with some mods. I mean, I did a whole battle with that.
Claim is being made. Nobody's responded yet. Here we go. The gauntlet has been thrown.
Oh my... No! No! No!
The mod works. The mod works. But I didn't expect it to be like this. Whoa.
There's even a VR mod at this point in time, but that's not exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to changes. Full overhauls, Game of Thrones, Kingdom Come Deliverance within the game itself. These things would be absolutely awesome, and whilst this is probably so far on the back burner for Slavic Magic, I think it's an option to consider. Releasing things like modding tools we have seen done really well for games like Skyrim, more recently The Witcher 3 with their Red Kit, and of course Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. 7 months after the release of their initial game, they brought out modding tools, and now we have open world mods, full overhauls, even Star Wars battles. It is incredible. Multiplayer mods have been championing the way at this point in time, and this is one of the reasons that Bannerlord is still getting 20,000 concurrent players on a daily basis, which is insane for a Mount & Blade and almost niche game. Now, there is one limitation to most of these factors, and that's the current scale of Manor Lords. It is not made by a Tale Worlds, it's not made by a Bethesda. This was started with one guy and with a good amount of funding, but still nothing on the scale of these huge companies. And I think that kind of patience needs to be practiced by a lot of the fan base. This video is definitely more of a speculation and mostly for entertainment and trying to gather some of the ideas that a lot of the fan base would like, but I think reasonable expectation is that most of these take time, and that having such a small team, and whilst it is growing at this point in time, mean that they're not going to be coming in some sort of, well, hastily fashion. I'd love to see modding within the game, and having the community help within that would be fantastic, but getting this core base game into its fully released phase, because we've got to remember, Manor Lords is still in early access, is probably the priority of Slavic Magic at this point in time. But what is something that is confirmed coming in the game? Well, this is AI opponents. You see, we do already have a Lord who sort of sits around. He takes regions kind of annoyingly, quite aggressively actually. I think that's been toned down in later patches. And then every time there's bandit camps, he'll send some troops onto the field. And at the end, or if you try and take out his regions, he will send troops to attack you. They hire mercenaries and have troops of their own, but they really form more of just a ghost over the whole game. There isn't too much of a presence when you're just playing the city building mode. And this is something that Slavic Magic has said should come later on. There is the presence of a king as well, who holds this similar grip upon the whole of the regions. Now, at this point in time, you have the royal tax that you have to pay every now and then, but it doesn't really affect the gameplay too much. But this will very, very soon. If you don't pay your royal taxes, the king will send a much bigger army in order to try and get his money back, or eventually destroy you and wipe you out if you don't do what he says. Of course, there will be more AI opponents within the world, but I'd like to see some on the map itself, not just when battles are happening or when small mercenary parties are rambling around. You know, like an Age of Empires style, where you see other villages pop up. They grow exactly the same way you would as a player. And I'm not talking about early strategy games where the AI cheats, spawns in resources, or recruits troops way faster than they should be able to, but in a really realistic way. You see these towns grow from nothing, you see roads start to form, you see buildings start to be put down, and you see them start to get more food in, get farms and trading routes in, then you're even able to trade with them in the future, but actually see that physical trade between two little villages. Now, I think the map of Manor Lords at this point in time is the perfect size for one player, maybe two with an AI opponent. But maybe seeing an expanded map, and when we see bigger maps in the future, this could be more of a situation. Having multiple AI, multiple villages on one map that you can then go to war with, or trade with, or create alliances with, for then, when it is time for the big king man to come into the game. Maybe you decided to start a coup. You want to go ahead and take out the king. None of you pay your royal tax, and when he brings this huge army on, you and your other allies or AI opponents on the map can team up against him, and that would be absolutely fantastic. An idea that I think is almost confirmed to have other AI within the map itself and not just wandering on every now and then. But let's talk a bit about your villages. Well, castles and walls are an obvious one. Manor Lords is still definitely on the smaller scale when it comes to medieval worlds. We're not talking about a total war game here. And I think that fully fledged castles and cities is probably too far. But, you know, your simple Motte and Bailey castle, you have your little village, streams running through, maybe you build a moat, and on top of a hill you put your nice little fort. You can then build palisades, or maybe upgrade them to walls later on around your village, or even just certain parts like your manors. Now, you can actually build manors and, well, gatekeeps and all that sort of tower garrison stuff on the manors within Manor Lords at this point in time, but it doesn't really have the same effect. It's pretty much just aesthetic, or it just upgrades or buffs your garrisons, so on and so forth. you can actually, and some people have done this, put palisades around their whole village by using this building mechanic with their manors, but it basically makes every building within the walls unusable and part of that manor. So it is not a way of doing it. In fact, I think Slavic Magic put a tweet out saying, guys, stop doing this. You're breaking the game, which I think is absolutely hilarious. And also keep doing it because it's funny as hell. But having the ability to put down castles and being able to walk inside them, maybe place buildings inside them while having palisades and walls around the outside for defenses would be cool. Being able to put your archers on top of maybe small wooden walls or palisades would be really awesome as well. Having extra little moats that you can put spikes in for extra defense. There is some clues of this coming in the future, and parts of it have already been implemented, but I think this is something that will take a lot more time, but would add a really cool extra dynamic of turtling and playing a bit more defensively, because at this point in time, you just have to grow your village, grow your town, build up enough of a garrison, so then when it comes time, you can start to go on the offensive. Very rarely do you get attacked by the enemy lords unless you have gone out of your way to start that yourself, or you are, well, the last region on the map. Let's talk about scenarios. At the moment, we have domination, conquest, peaceful, that sort of stuff, taking over all the maps, killing all the lord and all his regions, or just peacefully bringing up your village and not really doing much fighting at all, unless there's a few bandit stuff going on. But what about other scenarios? What about like a horde survival mode? I know that's not what you think, but think of like a They Are Billions, where you've built up your town and you still have to go through the motions as you would in your regular Manor Lords, maybe building some more of these palisades, building more defenses, and bandits are coming at you, maybe even the enemy armies are coming at you, and you've got to defend. Much like within Manor Lords in the first year, you have a bandit army that's coming to attack you, and you've got to prepare for it. What if we had that constantly coming, and you're having to defend that way? Those kind of game modes that change the dynamics, maybe a permafrost thing where it's permanently winter, or some way of completely changing the way resources are collected, limiting resources, limiting troops that you can use. I think these scenarios will be expanded with modding support as well as other people can get their hands on it. These are a few things that I think are easier to implement or have already been hinted at Slavic Magic that could be coming into the game. But what about something else that, well, I think would be incredibly interesting, almost an impossibility for the game, and something that I don't think Slavic Magic would ever consider because it's not exactly Manor Lord's selling point. This is co-op play. It was one of the main things that when I asked my subscribers in the community, what would you like to see in Manor Lords, that they brought up. And it's understandable. Whenever people see games like this that are just incredible, they did it with Kingdom Come Deliverance, they've done it with Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, and they're doing it with Manor Lords. They want to be able to share it with a friend. They want to be able to play this with other people. I think there's a city builder that does sort of online multiplayer or co-op. I think it's called Patreon. I don't think it was particularly successful, and that's because city builders don't particularly work well in this scenario. Manor Lords, I think, could, except from one thing. It is too good. And what I mean by that is there is too much detail. There's too many things going on at once. And even now, just playing single player, once you start to get to the later game, you have so many things from, well, people selling stuff at stores to the cloth physics on every single villager, to cows running around with their pathfinding and AI, to people farming and every single tiny little detail that's within the game. You know, the things that make this title fantastic and make you just want to look at it actually make stuff like adding in other players impossible, because it would be too intensive for any sort of game. You see, I think what a lot of people don't understand is going into a game with the intention of making it single player changes the entire process of development. You're able to put in things like immense detail, really in-depth situations and mechanics like Manor Lord has, because you don't have to worry about server-side bandwidth or client-side issues or bugs and lagging in that sort of sense. It adds in a whole nother dynamic that would completely change Manor Lord as a game. And whilst I think it would be fantastic, and I think that some sort of mod should come in the future just to see how they do it, putting the resources for someone like Slavic Magic and the development team in general to try and get it to co-op just wouldn't be worth the stress, the money, the time that they could be getting and putting it into its current form and a really solid base game. You see, Manor Lords is still in early access, and whilst it's had some great success, I think there's a lot more to come. Whether it's content, features, or even some patches for the issues, I think Slavic Magic has shown that they're willing to change things as they go on. Things like dynamic paths that used to be a factor. You know, when people would run around going to collect resources, they slowly erode paths into the landscape. that was changed because it just was lagging the game out. So they decided to make all paths put down by the player, and that's fine. And whilst that's taking some of the detail away, it was a compromise that had to be made in order to make the game playable. And it is. It is more than playable with the amount of detail. So while some of these I think are quite likely, there are also some that I think are mostly just speculation. But my God, wouldn't they be really cool? So please let me know down in the comments below, what is the thing that you most want to see come into Manor Lords, and I will be sure to check on them. I'm sure Slavic Magic's probably watching this as well, so they'll probably start reading the comments. If you want to say something nice about the game, or not, who knows? If it's funny, I don't care.